£168,000. That's what a contractor billing £800 a day actually takes home in a year. Not £208,000, not the number on the invoice, not the number you tell people at dinner, the real number. After bench time, after the gaps, after all the weeks you simply cannot bill. And here's what's wild. Most contractors have never done the maths. They walk around with a number in their head that's 30 to 40% higher than the reality. And that fake number, that phantom income, is what keeps them locked inside a model that's structurally designed to keep them exactly where they are. So I'm Javid Khan, founder of InovaOS. With over 25 years in enterprise tech, I've sat in every seat in the industry. Engineer, contractor, Big Four director, founder, acquirer. I've built and exited a cloud service business to a private equity-backed group for an 8-figure valuation. I built a 9-figure AWS business for a global enterprise inside 18 months, partly by acquiring 2 consultancies on the buy side. Today, I'm co-founder and CTO of CloudGuard AI, a venture-backed cybersecurity company on track for a 9-figure exit. And I was named one of Time's top 50 most ambitious business leaders in 2025. So this isn't theory. I've been the contractor chasing that day rate. I've been on the corporate ladder to partner. I've been the founder on the cap table. I've been the acquirer approving that purchase. And I've spent years coaching brilliant technical people, corporate and independent, making the move out that time for money trap into something they actually own. Now look, I want to be fair, because a day rate model isn't stupid, right? So on the surface, the logic is clean. You're a senior cloud architect, you bill £800. Just for argument's sake, let's assume outside of IR35. Your mate bills $650 a day, you earn more, simple maths. And the entire industry reinforces this. Recruiters rank you by rate. Your rate is your scoreboard. It's how you keep score against every other contractor in your network. So of course you optimize for it. Of course you negotiate harder on every renewal. That extra certification, it might add £50 a day? That's £10,000 a year. That logic feels like a forward motion. And early on, it really is. Going from $450 a day to $650 a day is a genuine lifestyle shift. So I'm not going to sit here and tell you that your day rate was always the wrong target. What I am going to tell you is that there's a point where it stops working, and almost every contractor blows straight past that point without even noticing, because that number on the invoice keeps looking healthy. You follow? So here's what's actually happening underneath. I call it the rate trap. 3 parts, and they compound on each other in a way that's almost invisible until someone lays out the whole picture in front of you. So let's just do that. The first part, the utilization lie. So here's the maths every contractor does. Usually on a napkin, usually at 11 PM on the sofa, £800 a day. Times that by 260 working days. That equals £208,000. Beautiful, clean, aspirational, and completely fictional. Because you don't pay 260 days a year. Nobody on the planet bills 260 days a year. Bank holidays take 8. Holidays, let's call it 25. You're not Superman, you do get ill occasionally, let's say 5 days. You're already at 222 days. But here's what really falls apart. That 222 assumes you're on a contract every single working day of the year with 0 gaps in between engagements. And honestly, when was the last time that actually happened? The reality is 3 to 6 weeks of bench time a year. That dead zone between one contract ending and the next one starting. Sometimes it's a week? Sometimes it drags to 2 months if the market softens. The average from what I've seen across hundreds of contractors sits around 4 to 5 weeks. So now you're at maybe 200 billable days. And £800 times 200 is £160,000. That's £48,000 less than that number that's already in your head. Then you layer on the costs you pretend don't exist, right? So accountant fees, professional indemnity insurance, software subscriptions, that's £5,000 to £8,000? Pension? No employer is contributing for you. If you want to match what you'd get in a decent corporate role, you're putting 10 to 15% aside for yourself. So that's another £16,000 to £24,000 gone. So the real take home from an £800 day rate lands somewhere between £120,000 to £140,000, which is really good money. I'm not pretending it isn't, but it's a very, very long way from that £208,000. Does that make sense? Put it this way, it's like quoting the top speed of a car without mentioning the engine overheats after 30 seconds at full throttle. The headline number is real. The operating number is completely a different animal. And because the whole industry only ever talks about that headline, you never see the gap. It just sits there quietly, getting wider every year. Now here's what makes this dangerous, because on its own, the utilization lie is just bad maths. It's annoying, but it's not fatal. What makes it fatal is what you do when you discover it, because every smart contractor eventually senses the gap. Maybe you don't run the exact numbers, but you feel it. You feel it like you should have more in the bank than you do. And so you do the obvious thing. You push the rate higher. And this is where the second part of the rate trap kicks in. The ceiling. So you go and get another certification, you specialize a bit tighter, you negotiate harder with your recruitment agency, and it works. You go from £800 to $850 a day, maybe even 900. In cybersecurity or a niche data AI platform, maybe you push to 1,000, 1,100, right? Feels like progress. But here's what nobody tells you. Day rates have a structural ceiling. And guess what? It's not set by how good you are. It's set by procurement. Think about what happens when you bill through a recruitment agency. They add 15 to 25% margin on top. So your £900 shows up on the client's purchase order as £1,050 to £1,125. And at some point, someone in finance looks at the number and does a comparison. We could hire a permanent senior headcount for this annual cost. And that's it. That's your ceiling right there. Not your skill, not your experience, procurement maths. So you end up in this bizarre situation where each rate push delivers less than that last. Going from £500 to £700 is a 40% jump. Very meaningful. Going from £900 to £1,000 is 11%. And it might take a new certification, a tighter niche, and a longer commute to get there. You see what's happening? The effort to reward ratio flips right upside down. Think of it like performance tuning a system that's already at 95% efficiency. You can squeeze that last 5%, but the engineering cost of extracting it is a widely disproportionate to the gain. Meanwhile, somebody with completely different architecture is getting 3 times the throughput with half the effort. Same talent, same hours, different design. And that word, design, is the one that matters most here, because you're not being underpaid, you're being mis-architected. Make sense? So the utilization lie eats your income, the ceiling caps your growth, and both of these are about numbers. But the third part of the rate trap, the part that actually costs you the most over a lifetime, isn't about the numbers at all. It's about what you own, or more precisely, what you don't. I call it the dependency architecture. So here's a question. You're a tech professional. You understand systems, right? So if I described a production environment to you that had a single node, no redundancy, no horizontal scaling, no caching layer, and 0 persistent storage, what would you say to that? You'd call it fragile. You'd say it's a liability. You'd probably say, who the hell architected this? And you'd be looking for a redesign. That's your contracting business right there. One node, that's you. One revenue stream, your daily presence. One distribution channel, your recruiter. One failure mode, you stop showing up, the money stops. There's no load balancing. There's no failover. There is nothing, not one thing running in the background generating value while you sleep. And here's the part that should really, really bother you. The person who benefits most from this architecture isn't you. It's your recruitment agency. I see this pattern constantly. Someone billing £900 a day through agencies, 8 years in, considers their main recruiter a genuine friend and partner. And then I ask one question. How many of your clients could you call directly tomorrow if you ever needed to? And there's always this pause, always then, well, none of them actually, because every relationship runs through the agency. They own the client, they own the pipeline, they control the access. You own your ability to deliver, that's it. In other words, you haven't built a business, you have built a dependency, right? And the dependency gets more expensive every year, not less. Because after 10 years of contracting, what asset exists? You don't own the client relationship. You don't have a methodology anyone can license. You don't have recurring revenue. You don't have a team earning while you're on holiday. You have your skills, your reputation, and your ability to show up tomorrow morning. That's the entire inventory. 2 people, same age, same skills, same starting point. One builds a consulting practice with direct clients and named methodologies. The other builds through agencies for 15 years. At year 15, person 1 has something worth selling. Person 2 has a LinkedIn profile and a pension pot. And that gap isn't a talent gap. It's an architecture gap. You cannot close it by adding another £50 to your day rate. Not even close. And honestly, this is the part that keeps people up at night once they see it, because you can't unsee it. The entire day rate model is structurally designed to extract value from your expertise without ever letting you accumulate any of it. Let me show you what this looks like in real life. So I was working with this infrastructure consultant. On paper, one of the most credentialed people I've spoken to in a long time. CSIP, TOGAF, AWS solutions architect professional, something like 16 years in tech, the last 8 to 9 years as a contractor, billing $950 a day in FS. Top end. He came to me and he said, Jav, I've hit a wall and I don't know what the wall is made of. So we sat down, I think it was a Tuesday afternoon, and we just mapped everything. His utilization over the last 3 years averaged 198 billable days. So 950 times 198, That's about what, £188,000 gross? After real costs, closer to what, £125,000 in his pocket. Not the £247,000 living rent-free in his imagination. But here's a number that changed his face. We estimated what his agency had collected in margin over those 8 years. Conservative estimate, something like £280,000 to £320,000. £1/3 for access, not for delivery, not for expertise, for introducing him to the clients he was the one actually serving. And when you see that number, the idea of I just need to get my rate at £1,000 suddenly looks absurd. You're not solving the problem. You're rearranging furniture in a burning building, right? So about 14 months, he shifted, built direct client relationships, developed a named methodology around his infrastructure resilient assessments, not a product, not a SaaS, just a structured, repeatable way of delivering what he was already doing, but packaged, positioned, priced as a fixed scope engagement instead of a day rate. His first direct client was a mid-market FS firm. He priced a 6-week infrastructure review at £18,000. That's roughly equivalent to his old rate across 19 days. But guess what? He delivered it in 11 days of actual work because his methodology was structured. So his effective day rate jumped from £950 a day to about £1,600 a day. No agency margin, direct relationship, a deliverable he owned and could refine and resell. Within 12 months, 4 direct client relationships, an associate he was bringing in on larger engagements, take home at about £175,000, a £50,000 increase. But the money wasn't even the important part. For the first time in 16 years, he was accumulating, not just earning. He owned something that he could grow beyond his personal capacity. The rate hadn't changed. The architecture had. Now, if I left it there, you might just think the answer is just go direct and cut out the middleman. And if it was that simple, every other contractor would have done it already. The fact that they haven't tells you there's something deeper going on. And there is. I call it the rate identity lock. See, when you've been contracting for 5, 8, 10 years, your day rate stops being just a number. It becomes your identity. It's how you measure your worth, how you compare yourself to other contractors at meetups. The answer you give when someone asks how your career is going. Yeah, I'm on £900 a day. That is the answer. Not I'm building a practice or I'm developing a methodology. The rate is the identity. So anything that threatens that rate, anything that asks you to step outside it, feels like it's threatening who you are, right? This is why contractors resist fixed price engagements, even when the maths obviously work in their favor. It's not about logic, it's about identity. And identity shifts are always harder than strategy shifts, always. Think of it like technical debt in a code base. Something built quickly that works fine today, but creates massive structural problems down the road. The longer you leave it, the scarier it gets to refactor. Every year in the day rate model, that debt compounds. Your identity locks in tighter. Your business development skills atrophy because the agency handles all of that. And the gap between where you are and where you'd want to operate independently gets wider and wider. So after a decade, the contractor who wants to go independent doesn't just need a new pricing model. They need a new identity. And that is a much bigger project than negotiating an extra £50 a day. You see why people stay stuck? So what actually works? And I want to be precise here because I'm not saying just charge more. I'm saying change the architecture entirely. Here's the core difference. The day rate model is linear. You bill today, you earn tomorrow. You don't bill, you don't earn anything. Yesterday's work has zero impact on tomorrow's income. A consulting practice compounds. Every direct client becomes a referral source. Every methodology you develop gets faster and sharper with every delivery. So your effective rate climbs even when your nominal price stays flat. Every case study makes the next sale easier. Every associate you bring in adds capacity that isn't tied to your personal hours. One model runs on addition, the other runs on multiplication. And over 10, 15 years, that gap between those curves get enormous. So there are 4 shifts and you don't need all 4 on day one. You just need to start pointing in the right direction. First, go direct. Just one relationship. One, you don't fire your recruiter tomorrow morning. You just build one direct client relationship, maybe through a former colleague, maybe through your existing network, because one direct relationship teaches you more about running a consulting practice than 5 more years of agency placements ever will. It's the difference between reading about swimming and actually getting in the water. You follow? Second, package what you do. Stop selling days. Start selling outcomes. Take the assessment, the migration, the architecture review, whatever you already deliver, and turn it into a named, scoped, fixed price engagement. I deliver a cloud readiness assessment across 4 work streams with a prioritized implementation roadmap. Same work you're already doing, completely different positioning. And the moment you name it, you own it in a way you can never own a day rate. Third, build IP. Document your methodology. create some templates, give the framework a name, because intellectual property is what separates a consultant from a contractor. A contractor sells hours. A consultant sells a system, and systems scale in ways that hours physically cannot. Fourth, design every decision for compounding. One filter, one question. Does this create something that accumulates over time, or is it a one-time transaction? Direct client relationships compound. Agency placements don't. A named methodology compounds. Another certification doesn't. A referral network compounds. A recruiter relationship doesn't. You don't have to get this perfect. You just have to start pointing every decision in the compounding direction. And look, I want to be straight with you about what this transition actually feels like, because it's not like a switch you flip. For most people, it takes 12 to 18 months. There's a messy middle where you still start taking some agency contracts while building direct relationships on the side. There's a learning curve around positioning and proposals and all the things the agency used to handle for you. But that messy middle is temporary. The day rate ceiling is permanent. The utilization lie doesn't go away. The dependency architecture gets worse every single year, not better. So the discomfort of transition is real. But it's finite. The cost of staying is infinite. It just doesn't feel infinite because it's spread so thin across decades that you barely notice it on any given Tuesday. Every contractor I've worked with who made this shift said some version of the same thing. I wish I'd done this 5 years ago. Everyone. Not because it was easy, because once they saw what was possible on the other side, the day rate model looked like exactly what it was. A well-designed cage, comfortable enough to keep you from noticing the bars. Your day rate isn't keeping you poor in the obvious sense. You probably earn more than most people you know, but it's keeping you poor in the structural sense. No equity, no compounding, no assets, no independence from people who control your access to work. And that structural poverty gets more expensive every year you ignore it. So, if any of this landed, I've put together a breakdown of how the transition from day rate contracting to direct consulting actually works in practice. The positioning, the pricing architecture, the client acquisition model, links in the description. It's free and it's genuinely useful. And if you're at that point where you want hands-on help making this move, that's what our launch program is designed for. Built specifically for senior technology professionals making this exact transition. Same link. But whether you click anything or not, here's the one thing I ask you to take away. Stop optimizing your rate. Start redesigning your architecture, because the rate was never the problem. See you in the next one.